In Ontario this morning, students are back in the classroom just days after a strike forced them out of school.
As a gesture of good faith to this announcement, CUPE OSBCU will be collapsing our protest sites starting tomorrow.
That happened after the Ford government pulled its back-to-work legislation for 55,000 education workers. CUPE had walked off the job Friday and Monday in protest of the Ford government imposing a contract on its members and trying to make strike action illegal. Now, so the strike we know is off for now, but what happens next in what has already been a really rocky labor dispute? Well, for that, we turn to the director of the School of Labor Studies at McMaster University, Stephanie Ross. Welcome to Your Morning.
Oh, thanks for having me, Anne-Marie.
Listen, it is a win for parents and students who get to return to the classroom, but how big a win is this for CUPE?
Well, I think it's a significant win for the union. In the face of unprecedented unity on the part of the labor movement and mobilization of their members, they were able to get the Ford government to walk back one of the most unprecedented pieces of legislation we've seen in this country, one that used the notwithstanding clause to restrain labor rights. And I mean, in one fell swoop, the government was able to provoke a mobilization of the labor movement, not just in Ontario, but across the country, something that we haven't seen to that extent for quite a number of years. And I think that the government had to blink. It was a test of the union and its support amongst the broader labor movement and the public. And I think the union passed the test. So now we'll see what they're able to do with that win at the negotiating table.
Stephanie, what's the story behind the story here? What do you think happened behind closed doors?
Well, I think there were a couple of things happening over the weekend. I think that the labor movement was clearly mobilizing and the government was hearing news of that. Ontario unions were in talks with each other about moving to widen the dispute beyond the school board sector. That could have meant walkouts by workers in all kinds of sectors, and that was going to be very destabilizing for this government. So I think that the government was hearing that that was the case. I think we also saw that public support really was falling on the side of the workers rather than on the government, even though the government was saying, you know, parents want kids back in school at all costs. It seemed like a significant majority of parents actually understood the union's argument that their working conditions are their kids' learning conditions, and the government didn't really win the public over on that matter. And I suspect that the government was also receiving a lot of calls from their own supporters, from the business community, who need workers at work. And if there was a legitimate threat of a general strike in Ontario, that was going to profoundly interfere with the government's supporters. So I think that there was a lot of pressure behind the scenes going on as well.
Well, there's a bigger national story here. Just because a strike has been averted for now doesn't mean that negotiations are in the clear. First of all, in this fight, what do you see happening next?
Well, they're going back to the bargaining table this morning. As has been mentioned, you know, the wage question is very significant, but so too are investments in public education. So in order to hire more staff, I think that the parties were quite far apart on the wage question, as you could see from statements by the Minister of Education over the last few days. So it is going to be tough. But as I've said elsewhere, you know, the current moment of inflation, which we're all feeling, added to the fact that these are workers who have had basically very, very small wage increases over the last 10 years, is going to make them extremely motivated to push, given the kind of outpouring of support that they receive. So I think that the union is in a strong position to hold firm on their bargaining positions. And it's true that, you know, these negotiations could come to an impasse. I hope that the government hears that there is a desire in the broader public, not just to get workers back at any cost, but to actually improve the wages of the lowest paid workers in the education sector. That is a significant, important thing to do, given that they are also primarily a female workforce. And I think that it's going to remain to be seen how influenced the government negotiators are by what we've seen this weekend.
It's a point that has been brought up over and over. It'll be interesting to see how that plays into the conversations going forward. Stephanie, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.